Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Asherz, and this is
Tobias,
Tobias. How's it been? How are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good. I am um happy, sad, and happy, bittersweet. I'm done with the Frogman Festival. I mean, not permanently, just like we
Sure.
did it. We did the
How
thing.
was it?
It was great. It's always fantastic. I mean, it's nice because this kind of event, as somebody who's been to conventions as a spectator, it can be difficult to be entertained throughout the day. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
And people stayed. I mean, people were there all day long. People kept coming all day long, but people stayed, and they seemed to be just genuinely into the topics. Every speaker had a full house, so there's no shortage there of people interested. And then, of course, the people attending. I did have a short list of folks that I hadn't met before, that I still didn't get to meet, because they didn't show up, or canceled, or had another issue going on. That's fine. But it was very interesting. So one thing that I did, probably, I'd say probably about a month before the festival, maybe less, was I wrote a letter to Eyewitness Ray Shockey
Oh, nice.
and asked him if he wanted to come to the festival. That frogman sighting with a young Ray Shockey at the time, police officer Ray Shockey, is kind of why we do this thing, right? And there's a lot of speculation surrounding it because his buddy had claimed to have shot at and potentially even killed the creature, and he said it was a pet iguana, and Ray Shockey just kind of went along with the story. Um, I had read an account later on by a different author who was supposed to be there, who again didn't show up, unfortunately. Who had said that he had spoken with Ray's parents, and they had confirmed that he did indeed see this bipedal frog person. But went along with the iguana story because he was being made fun of and didn't want the stigma that we had back in the 70s surrounding these things. So again, I wrote to Ray Shockey. I said, hey, come to the festival, whether whether this was someone's pet iguana and that's what you saw, or whether you saw a bipedal frog person. It doesn't matter. The story is still interesting. I think it'd be really neat to kind of settle that once and for all. And if you did see something, obviously this is the place to do it. Ray Shockey did not get back to me. um
He didn't even respond.
he didn't even
Oh,
respond.
shame on you, Ray Shockey. The least you could do is respond to the lady. Come
Well,
on.
and that's what I said. I'm like, look, if you don't want me to ever bother you again, just say that. Write me back and just say no comment. Here's my phone number. Call me and say I'm
Sure.
not talking about this and hang up. Nothing. I heard nothing. But this is wild. At the very end of the festival, and I am sitting around and I'm talking to the guy who put on the festival, Jeff Craig, and somebody comes up to him, a festivaler comes up to him, had found someone's debit card and turns it in, and the name on the debit card is Lisa Shockey.
Was it spelled the same?
It's spelled exactly the same. So, I mean, coincidence, completely unrelated, or maybe he was there. I mean, so Ray Shockey himself is like, he's like 76 or something
Yeah,
like
because
that
those
now.
sightings took place in what, 1972?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and
So
wasn't
he's
it much later when the other police officer, it was like in the 2000s or something, right? When the other guy came
yeah.
forward and was like, oh no, it was a tailless iguana.
So I think that was a more widespread statement that he had made. However, he definitely could have made that statement. Initially, the other police officer, Mike Matt something, M something, his first story was that he did see the creature. He shot at it, and that he
Right.
shot it, and the bullets just bounced off. It didn't care and kept going. And then yeah, later had came out and said, yeah, it was just an iguana in the early 2000s publicly, but he may have said that kind of locally,
Okay.
um, after he had also come out and said, yeah, I saw something and it was weird, and more people were like laughing at him.
Right. Right.
I don't know. I don't know the culture for the time. And, when you have these types of festivals, yeah, you've got locals that come in. A lot of the locals that came in had never even heard about this before. So,
It was okay. So the source I have for Matthews coming out later and being like, "Oh no, it was just an iguana or whatever. I made it all up," was actually a lot more recent than I thought. It was 2016.
oh wow, that is
Yeah.
really
Well,
recent.
yeah. The reason that he was talking about it was because he was contacted by WCPO out of Cincinnati after they ran a story on a sighting that supposedly took place that year. And it was during that then where he publicly said that, that
Hmm.
he had basically made it up or whatever, and that it was this iguana or whatever. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think he might be onto something. I think it's possible that, he just had maybe been saying that locally, and nobody heard about it because it's not like this story is being covered around the clock.
Right.
It sure as hell, like, people were done with it by 1973.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah. It was so obscure, anyway, at that time. But Loveland at that time was just a very small, know nothing town. Now, when you go to Loveland, it is very um, gentrified. Everything's brand new. It's got a cute
oh
little
really?
shopping area. Yeah, it's when we went there, because I had never even been to the area, and even trying to locate where his sighting took place is very difficult. And good luck trying to find where the 1955 businessman, saw the one waving the wand around.
Right, right.
Um, there's lots of bridges in that city, but but we tried to find the exact location, and it was hard. We kind of think we have an idea of where it was, but going down there, I mean, there's no way there's a frog humanoid taking up residency in the area without people knowing about it. It's way too populated now. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I mean, I thought it would be interesting. For him to at minimum know that this is what his experience has turned into.
Sure.
It has a legacy behind it. Whether he views it as a positive or a negative, I just thought that it would be interesting. When I did look up the name of the woman on the card, there does seem to be potentially a relation to him, except the last name is different. But it could be his wife. The last name could be the maiden name, not the name on the card, right?
Yeah.
With old records and stuff. So, I don't know. Like I said, he could have been there and we wouldn't have known. Nobody
Oh,
would know.
sure. Okay, and I'm just going to say this real quick because I already know what people are thinking. Look, we know that nobody owes us their attention. And if people have
Right.
moved on from these stories and experiences because they have just experienced any level of trauma, or it has upset their life, or it upsets them, we totally get that. So I don't ever want anybody to feel like they owe us their experience.
Right.
Obviously, we were kidding, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, that's why I wrote him a letter, right?
Right.
Obviously, I have the man's address. I have his phone number. If I really wanted to, I could use them. I'm not going to.
Yeah, of course.
I thought that that was probably the most formal way to go about contacting him and giving him the option if he wanted to reach out to me instead of thrusting myself upon him. And, I'm just going to tell people right now, don't harass these people.
Yes,
Leave them
exactly.
alone.
Exactly. I think you went about it the right way, 100%. You weren't intrusive. You really used like the least intrusive form of communication I can think of. And when he didn't respond, you just left it alone,
Right.
which
Exactly.
is what you should do. So,
Exactly. But if he did come and he was there and he checked it out, and he is comfortable in doing so, he can still definitely reach out to me and we can get his story from his mouth in front of people if he wants to do that. Or we can again encourage people to just leave the hell alone forever, if that's what he wants to
sure.
do.
Well, you can always
Um,
relate his story privately too,
exactly. And I offered that. I
Yeah,
said, don't even come to the festival if you're not comfortable with that. Just, tell me, and then I'll tell people what your statement is. We'll do it
right.
that way. But maybe he mulled it over. Maybe he wanted to check it out. Maybe he didn't believe that this was as interesting as it was. Or maybe he is again in his 70s and just wants to be left alone and rest the rest of his life. He's allowed.
Yeah.
So We'll see. But yeah, I did find that interesting. Shockey is not a very common last name. It's not like it was Smith, but they could be completely unrelated to each other. This other Shockey person could have came from out of state. There were people coming from all over to come to this festival. So could have been either way. They did show there's that new Frogman movie. I don't know if you've seen people talking about it a lot, but
I've
it's
seen
like
a
a
little bit about like a little bit of buzz about it. Yeah.
yeah, it's getting some traction in like the horror world. So they did do screenings of the film both nights, packed houses. I mean, people were really I didn't watch it. I just didn't, after being there all day long, I was ready to go home.
Oh no, I get it. I almost never do that like after hours stuff at a conference.
Yeah, I mean, unless it involves, having drinks and just kind of unwinding, that's really the extent of it. So, but it was good. It went really well. I think that people are, obviously demanding Frogman Festival number 3. I think Jeff Craig would be silly not to do another one. And yeah, so I don't know. That's that, I guess.
Just bring back world famous 40 and Tobias Wayland for number 3. Get
Clearly,
him
I
back in
mean,
there.
you have to be there.
I was there for the very first one,
You
and
were.
that was great. So, and I would love to be there anytime, of course.
You were. I did give a little bit more of a so when I went last year, my talk was just literally me talking. I didn't have a presentation.
Uh,
I just got up there and which is not something I'd ever done before. But I just got up there and talked. I talked about who I was, what I do, why I got into this, shared my own Mothman encounter and and my experiences with my own synchronicities and people ate it up. This year I actually did a talk, which is kind of why we're doing this week's topic of what we're doing about frog humanoids from around the world. Turns out there's a lot of them. It turns out pretty much all of them are related to some type of ufological activity. So I'm of the opinion that these things aren't terrestrial at all. Um, but I get up there and initially it's not a topic that I was too comfortable with, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna bomb this. To me, it felt like a, you know, top 10 frog humanoid encounters like YouTube video.
uh,
And I was like, how can I make this interesting? But some people, I mean, they really ate it up. They really did like it. And I totally planned that. I was super confident. I knew exactly what I was talking about, clearly. So, but I thought that it would be good. We're not going to get into it quite yet, but I thought it would be good to then, of course, follow up my now world famous Frogman Festival talk with reptilian, reptile type creatures from around the world also. Because that was the thing, trying to narrow down like what's considered a frogman was difficult.
yeah,
Um,
like if you look at the illustration made by Ray Shockey's sister of that 1972 sighting, I mean, it could be like an iguana person. It could be a
right,
lizard person. I mean, it was even described initially as being frog or lizard like. I just feel
exactly.
like the frog narrative is the one that caught. Like that
Mhm.
was the one that people liked the most, and it gave them the coolest imagery, and it makes the best mascot. And so we ended up with Frogman.
Yeah,
But just like Mothman, Frog doesn't necessarily actually have anything to do with it. It's much closer than Mothman in that it could be like some kind of amphibian. Maybe it had frog like qualities at least, because Mothman has fuck all to do with a moth, right?
right.
But still, it's not quite as cut and dry as people think. There's the edges of this are very blurred.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's just not
Yeah.
that clear.
Well, and right, so I'm like, okay, so what do I qualify then as a frogman? What are my qualifications of it? Obviously amphibious was one of the things. Frog like. But a lot of those stories, the things that they describe just kind of really sound a lot like gray aliens. But green instead,
Sure, doesn't surprise me at all.
So I'm like, okay, all right. So I had to, put it together in a well thought out form. But I specifically left out, some people were bringing up like other reptile type creatures to me. And I was like, well, it didn't quite meet the criteria. So I had, planned ahead of time, knowing I was given that talk, so that way we could kind of talk about those types of things here on the show, because they are equally as interesting. This didn't quite
Agreed.
fit Frog. So, other than that, the last time I talked to you, I told you I was playing this game. I'm still playing that game, the cult game.
Yeah.
That is still happening. But then I really fucked all the way up this time. I
Uh-oh.
bought in the year of 2024, I bought a PSP, and it is modded. So now I own every game from PlayStation 1 and before.
Okay. So you're playing
And
like a ton of GoldenEye right now?
oh, hell yeah, I am. Basically, I mean, there's everything is on it, and I'm like overwhelmed because like the okay, so the cult game's fun, but it's definitely lost its luster really quick.
Uh-huh.
Because I have almost pretty much beaten the whole thing, and I've kind of had to slow down. Um, but so anyway, my friend mods these PSPs, and so he keeps flashing them around, wanting people to buy them, and he's like, "The homies get a discount." I'm like, "That's me, I'm homies," and so I I bought one as my treat to myself, and now I'm like, I don't know, the world is too big now. So I'm like, you know what? I bought it. I kind of fucked with it for a second. Then I set it down and I'm like, this is just going to have to wait a minute. But, thankfully, I don't have anything. I have no commitments until June at this point, except for this show.
You can
So,
fit in a lot of pod racing between now and then. A lot.
right. So we'll see what happens. I don't, that's it really. Anything new going on with you in your life?
Oh, fuck, I don't know.
Okay.
No, I mean, probably. Let me think about it. I wasn't prepared for this question that gets asked of me every
Every
single
time?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's the same old, and that's good. Like that is a good thing. Like I've got some projects that, or one project that I had worked on last year that's basically done. That's going to come out on a major streaming service this year. So I'm just anxiously anticipating that release. I think that'll be great. I think people will really enjoy it. And then I've got a new book project that I'm working on with a friend of mine, and that's going to get into a lot of the research that I've already done, but expand on it and sort of tie a lot of things together. And it's going to involve some interesting travel. I'll be uh, going to the Mothman Festival coming up in September. So I've never been, and I don't know if I'll like it, but I'm going to be there. So if you see a very confused man over 6 feet tall with a big black hat, just be super nice to him because he's probably overwhelmed.
It is an experience. Well, the good news that I have for you is that I do go to the Mothman Festival every year, and I have friends who have a fantastic setup to decompress and get the hell away from the crazy. So you'll be in good hands. You'll be fine.
Oh, good. All right. Well, that helps. My writing partner for this, like he wanted to go. I think partly to soak up the culture, but also to do some investigating and stuff. And I'm like, well, we're going to have to investigate, uh, not during the actual festival.
Right.
If there's anything you want to poke around in, obviously. But so yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'm sort of a mind that Point Pleasant itself probably isn't the best place to investigate winged humanoid sightings at this point anyway. I think it's a great place to go if you want to try to understand the culture that has arisen out of this phenomenon, and if you want to try to understand that culture's impact, if you want to understand the phenomenon's impact to that community. Point Pleasant, obviously, you have to go there to experience that, to
Mhm.
really learn about it, to get some kind of insight. But as far as like winged humanoid sightings are concerned, there are probably way better places to go. And so, I'll definitely be going to those as well for that aspect of it. But
Yeah, it is an experience that you have to experience, right?
yeah,
It's definitely a very strange place. even if you're going during I mean, that's where I started, was going to the Mothman Festival. Now, it wasn't as big as it is now when I went the first time. But it was an odd experience overall. But the TNT area, which, during festival time is, of course, it's packed. But even if it's packed, I can show you the secret places and where it's not going to be packed. And um it is fucking weird there. Like,
Mm,
we've definitely, we've never seen any winged humanoids out there. I don't expect that we will. Um, but I shit you not, one time we went and it was summer and we went out there. This was I think it was like towards the end of the summer in 2020. And at that point in time, that's when I first started working on the documentary. I was out there like every weekend, and we go out there and the whole area was gray. And what I mean by that is not like it was an overcast day. Like, the trees were gray, the ground was
mm,
gray. Like, it was like it was like stepping into a black and white film. It was so fucking weird. And I still don't really have an explanation for it. This was not wintertime. Again, it wasn't a crazy overcast day. It was just everything was gray. And I mean, it's like there was a fire, and there wasn't. I mean, none of that had happened. It was like everything was like covered in like ash, but it wasn't. You could pick it up and touch it. It was just gray. I don't know.
mm.
It's fucking weird, man. I can tell you that. And has never happened since then. And I've been every season, every time of day, every type
Right.
of weather. And nothing like that has ever happened again. That same day we caught, I do have it on video. We caught like weird electrical crackling in the air, but couldn't find out where it was coming from. It was weird. It's a weird place. So be prepared, to get weird at the TNT area.
Sure. No, I mean, I'm always ready to get weird. Like that is no problem. Well, that is actually pretty heartening because it really was one of those things where, to me at this point, like my concern, of course, is that anything interesting, about the paranormal has since left Point Pleasant, and it's just kind of become this tourist trap, right? But yeah, if there's still interesting shit going on there, I want to see it. I want to see some sort of paranormal discoloration in the the environment like
Yeah.
that. That would interest me. I've certainly experienced some strange environmental effects like that myself, not specifically that, but somewhat similar stuff in different areas, like seeing a sort of like static overlaid
Yeah.
over in area like that was very strange. So yeah, no, like that. That's very cool. As long as that's not indicative of, the TNT area being a Superfund site. Like as long as it's not just
Yeah.
a buildup of toxins that have drained the color out of like the plant life or something that's just giving us all cancer while we sit there and look at it, then fine.
I can't promise you that, but I can show you the red algae if you'd like. I know where it's at. No, you can touch
Nice.
it. No, it's things like that are always like, yes, it's exciting and super interesting to me in the moment, but also as an investigator, it's really frustrating because, like, one of the things that you can't do on film, like, yeah, I can record that gray area all day long and show you guys that it's gray out there. You don't understand what it feels like until you're out there. And translating that onto, into letting people know what that experience is like, man, that's so hard to do. I haven't unlocked that one yet. So maybe one day. So it's frustrating because it's like I am having this abnormal experience. I know it's abnormal, but I have no explanation for it. And I don't have any way to really show that to the audience that I'm trying to convince that this is abnormal because they don't know. I could have taken spray paint and spray painted it all gray.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean
Um,
that's fair. Honestly, that what you're describing is why I like books, and it's why I'm a writer and not a filmmaker. And I think it's because there are just certain aspects of the human experience that can only be described through words from one human to another, and it
right.
they don't necessarily translate well to film, because film can't describe how you're feeling. You
Yeah.
know, it can't describe the experience. All it can do is show it, right? So yeah, I think that it'll be interesting, and yeah, if I experience anything weird, I'll try to relate it to people as well as I am able to through the magic of the written word.
I hope you do. I hope it gets real strange for you. I'm going to be manifesting it the whole rest of this year until September. So.
Nice.
Well, it's because I've been so damn busy with frogs, have not caught up on any news this week. Tobias, do you have any news to share?
I do have some news. I've got, let me see here. I've got two anomalous instances of strange creatures and one announcement. I'm thinking maybe just do the sightings first, and then get into the announcement. Sort of, it's sort of a call to action, honestly. But yeah, let's start with this weird humanoid out of Rockford, Illinois. So the way it's described reminds me of like a crawler, right? Which I don't even like that word because it's like one of those internet creepy pasta words.
Sure.
But they're a thing now, and people are submitting reports of them. So I don't have a better word. So we're going with crawler. So this person actually wrote in email to Lon Strickler over at Phantoms and Monsters about how they experienced this weird sighting in 2019. And basically, long story short, their mom is a vet. That's a veterinarian, and she had a clinic sort of out on the western edge of town, and while they were out there in this area that isn't completely isolated, but is far enough on the edge of town to basically be right across from 30 miles of cornfield, and then some forested areas to the north, and even the section of town that it's by that is more populated is still not very dense. Um, and so they're out back, and they're letting this dog out for their mom because she needed to stop by and check on some of the overnight animals at this clinic, right? And so they're out back letting this dog out, and they're eating this cookie that they found inside. So you know that was probably the most believable part of the story, because they were a teenager at the time, and I have no problem. I have no problem picturing some teenager just seeing some cookies. They don't know who they're for, like they don't know if somebody was saving those cookies. They just grabbed one and started eating it, and then took it outside. They're watching this dog, decide they don't even want the damn cookie, so then they throw it away. Like typical fucking teenager, just wasting half a cookie that they don't
That's
even know if they should
teenagers.
have been eating, right?
Bastards.
Seriously. Anyway, so they throw this cookie, and I guess when that happened, like this cookie lands out in this sort of tall grass, marshy area out behind this clinic, right? And when it does, they see this thing come out of the grass. Like it sort of stands up, and they describe this emaciated humanoid. They could see the definition of its spinal column. That's how skinny it was, and it was moving hunched over, but it definitely looked uh, bipedal, right? So they see this thing, and it goes, and I guess it goes after their cookie. I mean, it was
Hmm.
super like skinny. It was probably hungry. It goes right for the cookie, and they're not super interested. This witness in investigating this too much. It was a pretty disturbing encounter, and so they decided to get the hell out of there. And they did. And what was interesting too was the way they described the dog's reaction to it, where like normally it was a smaller dog, And small dogs can be yippy, right? Like they have their little Napoleon complexes, right, where they just feel like they need to stand up to everything all the time. But this dog seemed a little more frightened than this person expected necessarily, and so yeah, it kind of stood there, and then when the witness, finally like yanked on the leash and was like, "We gotta get the fuck out of here," then the dog kind of springs to life, and it's like, "Oh yeah, we should get the fuck out of here." So yeah, like overall, a pretty interesting sighting, and what makes it interesting to me is that Rockford to date, as far as I know, in my research, is up to like 7 winged humanoid sightings. And now this sighting is just a sort of one-off email situation. So like when I published this to the Singular Fortean Society, I published it as one of our reports from the void, right? So
Mhm.
that is to say something where we weren't able to follow up on it. So kind of just take it for what it's worth. But because of it coming out of Rockford and the 7 winged humanoid sightings, most, if not all of which, actually had pretty consistent and considerable follow up with witnesses, makes it a lot more interesting to me. You get a lot of these other anomalous humanoid sightings that come along with areas sort of heavy in winged humanoid sightings. And so anytime one of them pops up, it's always on my radar. Like I always find it fascinating. So
Mhm.
yeah, this I think was still a worthwhile report to record and share overall.
Yeah, I think that one thing that you find when you start getting into specifically Mothman research is how much you now also are into humanoids in general, varying
Yeah.
degrees.
Oh
um,
yeah.
because yeah, the pale crawlers or the crawler, whatever it is you want to call these things, whatever your flavor is, these definitely seem to kind of, they don't necessarily coincide with these sightings, but they do tend to pop up a lot. Every encounter that I've received about a crawler, now I've received a couple of them personally, two of which you guys will be hearing on the new show that'll be coming out soon, Fringes of Reality. Two of the witnesses come on and tell their story about them. They always involve food of some in some capacity. So I find
Huh.
that interesting. The two that like I said, you guys will be able to listen to involved like roadkill specifically. And that seems to be a common theme. This is a cookie, a little bit different. Um,
Right.
but one thing that I've heard in like Bigfoot and Bigfoot research is, I'll share a little secret. First of all, you shouldn't feed wildlife, really, because then they become dependent on you. But one thing that tends to work if you're trying to have encounters, or at least they say with Bigfoot, is to share like very calorie rich food. So cookies would make sense. Anything that's fattening, sweets is a big one. And again, that makes a lot of sense for these creatures who are just kind of out there trying to make it, and probably, let's be honest, barely making it given their resources and their size. But I can't say I'm surprised it was attracted to the cookie to begin with, because if it is a terrestrial cave dwelling, which seems to be popular creature, it's gonna go for that cookie. You know, that's
Sure. I mean, like I said, it was really skinny, which,
Mhm.
might indicate hunger, right? Like if it is emaciated, like if it really is unhealthily skinny and that's just not what it's supposed to look like, then one would imagine that yeah, it would be super interested in something like a cookie.
Mhm.
Oh boy, I totally had something else I wanted to say and I forgot. So don't worry, I'll interrupt us later when it's totally off topic,
Bring
and
it back up again.
just bring it right back up, bring it full circle. Yeah. All
When we
all
well,
right. Well, we can
oh, no,
we
it's okay.
can.
I'll say this: when we did
Okay.
the second Wendigo episode, because I've done two now. The first one was just kind of, um I'll be honest, not very good. Just not very well researched, at the time. My opinion had definitely changed from that first episode to the second episode. Not by much. One tie that I've made between like the Wendigo and these crawlers is that the crawlers look like what the Wendigo is supposed to look like.
Sure,
Emaciated, gray skinned, just kind of sickly and desperate. Um, the conclusion that I still have to this day is that the Wendigo is a physical being. It's not a physical being. It is if anything, if anything at all, either a cautionary tale or a some type of spiritual being rather than a physical. I think it is very possible that maybe they'd seen these creatures, these crawlers, and assumed that that is a Wendigo, and that's they kind of went with it. So in some of these Native American tribes, which I just went on a tangent on with other people about how we shouldn't say, "Oh, it's Native American lore,"
sure,
because it is extremely racist. Because there's 574 recognized Native American tribes. So saying that any of them have any type of similar belief at all is like saying that, Southern Africans are the same as Haitians. They're not, But
sure.
anyway, I digress. I think that in some instances, this could be where we kind of see that layover and we actually get like a physical form of Wendigo, is because I think that there is something to these weird pale crawler things. There's,
Definitely could be.
yeah.
I mean, well, when it comes to the Wendigo specifically, I mean, I think it would be fair to say, if you're talking about the Algonquin tribe or the other tribes that exist within that Algonquin language
Mhm.
grouping, so tribes around the Great Lakes, I mean, they do have this common cultural heritage of Wendigo stories.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's probably fair to say. You're not like lumping the Navajo in with the
Right.
like Ojibwe or something that are like in completely different parts of the country.
Yeah.
Like that would
Yeah.
be that's a whole nother animal. But
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I just was saying in general, the Navajo don't have Wendigo, so
right,
no, when you just say Native American, it's so general. I guess you can say Algonquin, which in itself is an entire class of multiple different tribes.
it is. Yeah.
But anyway, the point being that I think that when people try to look for like old evidence of things like this, I think that's where you're going to find it for this creature known as the pale crawler. But now it's taken on its own form, and everybody calls it the rake, and that's really annoying because that is not real.
Wait, what?
I know, right?
The
Have you
rake
heard of
isn't
this?
real?
I know.
The rake is my favorite cryptid.
Stop.
I only said that because I really wanted to know how you would react. Like if you would just physically throw your microphone out a window, or
Well, the only reason why I didn't act negatively is because it's you, and I know better. But
right.
I'll give you some
Okay.
credit there.
Do you want to hear about an actual cryptid?
Yeah, let's tell us about a
Okay.
cryptid. Yeah, let's hear about a real
So
cryptid.
yeah, so you've probably heard of anomalous big cats in the United Kingdom, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So, honest to God, official, real cryptid, trademarked. You can call it a cryptid because there are very few anomalous phenomena on this planet as likely to be a cryptid as these
Mhm.
these big cat sightings, right? And
Yeah.
they almost certainly are normal, undiscovered animals, And so there was this lady, Courtney Roberts, was driving on the A483 near Chester in England. This would have been a week and a half ago, roughly, when she saw this animal on the side of the road. And it was lying down, and she assumed it was dead, but it looked awfully strange. And so she took a picture of it, and sure enough, if you look at the actual photograph, it does look like a rather large feline, of the right coloration to maybe be something like a mountain lion, bobcat, somewhere in that area, lying on the side of the road. I mean, ostensibly having been struck by a car or something, although it's not obviously disfigured or damaged.
So is
And
this
so
on
she
before you go
Mhm.
forward, is this on singularfortean.com?
Oh, it sure is. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up singularfortean.com and go take a look while you share the rest of the story.
Okay. And so she takes this photograph, and right away she's not sure what it is. She's not immediately jumping to like mountain lion or something like that. That just really has no business in being in England. Um, she's thinking, Scottish wildcat, maybe, I don't know. And so she goes to Facebook and she shares it on this lost pets group, and it gets the attention of all of these big cat researchers in the UK, and there are a lot of them. Like this is a big, popular cryptozoological subject, and it gets their attention, and that's when all these people start saying, "Hey, this looks like it could be a juvenile mountain lion." I think they call it a cougar,
Hmm.
which they are synonymous. It's fine. You'll even hear puma sometimes, although
Hmm.
that's not technically correct. People will colloquially refer to cougars or mountain lions as pumas. So anyway, so yeah, she starts getting told by these cryptozoologists throughout the UK that that's what it looks like, and she eventually gets noticed by the local newspaper. And then, of course, that spreads throughout all of the UK tabloids, of which there are about a million. And they start talking to experts. And so they talked to what was this guy's name? I didn't know who he was, but yeah, I know this. He probably doesn't listen to the show. If he does, sorry, I guess.
I hope
um,
he does.
I know, right? He just gets so mad. He drives over to my house just to punch me in the face.
He
He's so
drives
mad.
through the ocean and everything.
Yes. No, he actually this guy is from Canada. This is
Oh, well,
yeah, so
okay,
not
yeah.
even that far away. I'm in Wisconsin. We might be neighbors. I don't know. So so this Canadian adventurer and wildlife photojournalist Jason Kenzie said that he thought that the animal could be a juvenile cougar. Like that's literally what he said. So he's like, he looks at it. He says it looks feline, but I believe it's too large to be a Scottish wildcat. It could be a bobcat or lynx, but really, this has the markings of a young cougar. So, I think that there is an obvious caveat here, and that is that this Jason Kenzie person is a wildlife photographer, and I did poke around his website some. I didn't see any like zoological credentials, in terms of being someone who would, through education and expertise, be specifically credentialed to observe and verify speciation or anything, right? So like I didn't see anything about him that was like, oh, also I am a wildlife expert because I have a doctorate in zoology and I study big cats.
Right.
So I believe that he's seen a lot of big cats in the wild, and so that probably makes him more qualified than most to
Mhm.
judge what one looks like. So yeah, I mean, take that for what it is. But what's interesting about all of this, for anybody who doesn't know, is that this has been going on for decades and decades of
Mhm.
people seeing these big cats in the UK where they're not supposed to have any, and the government denies it. If it gets any traction at all, it's explained away as like escaped exotic pets and things. And yet, there are researchers who insist that there must be breeding populations of these cats because they are seen so frequently, and they are so out of place. And so it really is. It's one of those interesting cryptid mysteries, like the thylacine, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not super sexy. There's no mind speak or fucking interdimensional portals or anything like that, but it very well could represent an actual undiscovered, out of place animal.
Mhm.
And so, sort of
Yeah.
the traditional cryptid.
Yeah, a very bona fide classic case of cryptozoology. There wasn't mind speak in cryptozoology to begin with. I don't believe so.
Wait, what?
Yeah, but what do I know? I'm just somebody on the internet. No, I like the big cats because it is such, classic cryptozoology. What's interesting about Britain, like you said, it is a big thing over there. Like this is their Bigfoot, you know. They
They
don't have
also
big
have Bigfoot, though.
well, you know,
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to not get into a fight with you today, Tobias. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you're gonna have to
um,
try pretty hard.
right. They have they claim to have Bigfoot. What's interesting about Europe is that
Yeah,
when they colonized it, they wiped out everything natural. They Everything that they have there right now is it might as well be man-made. Any natural structures that they have are pretty much man-made. So you don't have, whereas like here in in the North America, we have all this untouched land. They don't have that over there, which is why they don't have Bigfoot, unless Bigfoot is an alien or a ghost or whatever the fuck goofy shit
it's
people say it is now.
trolls.
It's trolls,
Well,
like Fae.
I don't think. Okay, one now see. Now you have managed to hit one of my things that
I,
I am endlessly irritated by is
yep,
just people being like just explaining things away by
yep,
saying it's
by
Fey
Fae.
as though they know what that fucking means. Um,
Yep.
right. So, but yes, if you want to go down that road, sure. Maybe Bigfoot is a fairy. But I have seen some interesting research, sort of drawing parallels between um, folklore that has come, like specifically, really out of like Northern Europe. So you get stories of like trolls and giants and stuff. So drawing parallels between that folklore and modern folklore surrounding
Mhm,
Bigfoot, and there are some interesting parallels. There have long been stories of wild men in the woods, throughout the UK and into to mainland Europe there. Um, and so there's some precedent, I think, for that kind of being. But yeah, I mean, if you look at Bigfoot from a purely biological standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, let's face it, England is not that fucking big. Like the entire United Kingdom is not that fucking big.
right.
Like they're these relatively small islands that things shouldn't really be able to hide on.
Yeah. Well, and
So
yeah, and I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know what Bigfoot is. I don't. But if you're looking at it as a flesh and blood undiscovered species of ape, it's you're not gonna find it in the UK. It's not over there. It's not in
right,
Europe. However, if you are looking at a breeding population of big cats, which happens to be the most sought after animal in the exotic animal trade, very likely. Very likely. Um,
sure,
we aren't questioning whether or not big cats exist. We know they do. Have these big cats somehow gone awry and are now living in the wild in Europe, and there's a population of them. Um, I think so. I do think so. And yeah, it's not as sexy as interdimensional Bigfoot, but I think it is neat, and I think it's something they eventually they have to recognize. I think it's just a matter of time before they do. Looking at the picture of this particular encounter, I mean, I'm not a catologist, I don't know, but it does look very cougar like. I did look up the Scottish wildcat, and if you have not, Google that motherfucker. Man, they look so mean. I mean, in a cute way.
right.
But they look really annoyed with you. Like I guess like most cats. But they've got like these elaborate stripes on them. Like this does not have that.
Right.
And while it could be some type of genetic variation, I suppose, it seems like that would be even more rare than admitting that there is a breeding cougar population. So I don't know. I
Oh,
don't know.
totally. Yeah, I mean it is a mystery. Now what makes this even more of a mystery is after people on the internet were telling her that, hey, we think this actually could be something very interesting. This could be like a juvenile cougar or something. She went back. Like she and her partner went back to look for it, but guess what?
They
It was
found it and
gone.
they tested it and it was a cougar.
No, I mean you would think, right? No, it was gone. Yeah.
Um,
Conspiracy, I bet.
Clearly a government cover up.
Men in Black abducted the body of this
Yeah.
juvenile cougar. You know what I hope it was? I hope that it wasn't actually hurt and it just got up and left.
He's just chilling out on the side of the road. It could have
Yeah.
I mean, that's cats for you.
Right? I was thinking about that. I was like, what would I rather be? Because at this point it could be anything.
Yeah.
So what would I rather have had happened? And definitely I am in like fuck conspiracies. I don't give a fuck about conspiracies. Like I am much more in the camp of I hope it just got up and left. Like it was like sunning itself on the pavement and then it was like, you know what? I'm good. And it just walked away.
Gonna go find some dinner. I hope that too. I agree with you. Because on the flip side of that, you're right. Someone took it, and who could it have been? Yeah, it's just answering a mystery with another mystery.
Right. So, but it is an interesting story. And if anybody is actually a fan of that sort of classical cryptozoology that doesn't involve any paranormal elements, definitely look into anomalous big cats. Now, you might find them referred to as alien big cats,
Yeah.
which I fucking hate. And that's why I have just been slowly replacing that with anomalous big cats because alien big cats is fucking stupid and doesn't make any sense and never made any sense.
Hmm.
Because if they live there and they represent a breeding population, then they're not really alien. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if they're an undiscovered species, then they're not alien. Things aren't just alien because you haven't discovered them yet. Like, what the fuck kind of colonialist bullshit is that? You know,
Right.
like it's a stupid word, but anomalous just means out of place or unexpected. It makes way more sense. Plus, you'll see people use the initialism ABC to refer to this like particular phenomenon, and you don't even have to change it. You can still call them ABCs, just instead of alien, start using the much more appropriate word, anomalous.
Anomalous. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there you
That's
go.
a good point. That's a good point. I like the as far as cryptid big cats go, it's never talked about now. The Maltese tiger. Man, that's a classic cryptozoology right there.
Nice.
The blue tigers,
Oh yeah.
those are those are some classic cases. We have that here. Not the Maltese tiger. We
Sure.
have anomalous big cats along the East Coast and the Midwest,
Oh, we got them
and
here too.
even yep, and even central, and there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence for these breeding populations, and we also just, I don't know, turn the other cheek and go, nah, that's not happening. It's always someone's escaped pet. It's always one that has migrated for whatever reason into the area. It's always some bullshit excuse.
Right. No, I mean you're not wrong. Like the DNR especially loves to deny breeding populations of cats or
Yeah.
any evidence towards breeding populations of big cats in any area where people claim to see them with any regularity. So I don't know if it goes. I wouldn't call it like a government cover up,
No.
but I do think that like it's convenient for the DNR to deny it for as long as they fucking can
Yeah.
because then they don't actually have to like address it.
They don't have to do
So,
anything, right? And
right,
that's like, it's silly. Well, it's not just it's dangerous. It's dangerous to let people, saunter off into the woods and think that, you should be aware of what your threats are. And there's this horrifying video on YouTube. It really is probably the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life of a hiker who is being harassed by a cougar. That's the best way to put it.
right,
She is like going after him, and I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like 7 to 10 minutes long, and it's like him just trying to not get attacked by this thing, walking backwards in the woods, trying to get away from it.
right,
And, coming upon that, like, I would much rather come upon a fucking dog man in the woods than an angry cat mama, because the DNR doesn't want to admit that there are cougars in, like, West Virginia, for example.
yeah,
Um, I think that it's shitty to do to people. And, for what? I don't know. I agree. I think it's just more of a, they just don't want to do their jobs. And, unfortunately, that's just in every career.
right. I'm willing to give the DNR at least the benefit of the doubt when I talk about them not necessarily wanting to confront this issue, only because I know, at least in Wisconsin, they are constantly getting fucked over and like getting their budget cut. And so it's possible that part of that, like part of what's really playing into this is that they just don't have the resources, and they're like, well, fuck, what are we supposed to do? We barely have enough resources to do what we're doing now, and if we have to add one more thing to that, we're already stretched thin, and something has to give. And so until there is like undeniable proof that this is going on, um, I don't I I find it difficult to blame them too much, I guess, for kicking the can down the road as long as possible. I would feel differently if they were super well funded, but we've had, and I'm not going to get super political, but I will say this: we have had enough Republican fuckery in this state for so long, just
Yeah.
slashing budgets and making sure that shit does not get funded properly,
Hmm.
that at this point, any state agency that feels like they can't do their job, I have loads of empathy for,
Hmm.
because we have to undo all of that shit before they'll probably be able to operate correctly.
Yeah. And funding, it shouldn't matter to you guys because that is what keeps cryptozoology. It's what keeps, well, not so much ufology, with the government itself, but definitely cryptozoology as mysterious. One argument against Bigfoot that people have all the time is, well, how come there's no bones or how come there's no DNA? And it's like, what are you gonna do? What if you find a clump of Bigfoot hair in the woods? Right? You're just a person walking around the woods. What do you do with it? Do you even know what to do with it? Do
Eat
you
it
even
immediately. Don't think about it. Try to absorb its DNA into yours and become Bigfoot.
That's how DNA works, right?
Yeah,
You just
I
eat
think
things and
so.
you gain the
I went to
DNA.
public school. I have no idea.
Yeah, but you also went to college for fucking English. So I
I
mean,
did go to college for fucking English. Oh, and also speaking of, before we move on, I want to make sure everybody knows I am aware that I misused the word speciation, um, and I did it on accident. So don't fucking at me about it. All right, I know it's fine. Just move on.
fair enough. But yeah, no, funding is super important. Like I said, there's nobody testing Bigfoot DNA. Like there's no like dedicated we have it now. We just now have these places where we can send our own DNA to, right? To get picked apart. We don't have a group testing Bigfoot DNA unless there is a privately funded group going at it, conducting a Bigfoot DNA research, of some sort. And
Right.
they do pop up, but they don't happen all the time. You got to have the money in order to even try to test these things, and people just don't get that part of it. I guess I'd love to do an episode on, like, let's say we discover a cryptid and like what the next steps would be, and like how we get that cryptid recognized scientifically and what that would look like. I think that would be interesting,
That would be interesting.
just to kind of show that process, because it's not just, hey, I found this thing in the woods and like that's that, obviously, because it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
It's not that easy. There's a lot of steps to it. Anyway, well, good. Those are some good news stories.
I do have one more real quick.
That's
This one
right.
won't take nearly as much time, but I do want to let everybody know that the paranormal, or I want everybody to know about the Paranormal Research Symposium. So this is being presented by the Association of Paranormal Study, and will take place August 17th this year in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And what they're looking for are people to submit abstracts in advance of possibly giving presentations or putting on workshops or panels. So, if you are interested in any anomalous phenomena, from parapsychology to UFOs to cryptozoology to the paranormal or cryptozoology, unless I already said that, whatever, um, then you should apply to this. Now, there are some pretty interesting things that go along with it. So what they want to do, like I mentioned before, initially you would submit in abstract, which is basically just a short description of what you want to do. So you'll include your general like thesis, and then whatever. Like they have guidelines that are going to explain it way better than me just kind of rambling about it right now. Um, and then after everything is said and done, you'll end up actually submitting a full research paper. Um, and that then would be published in a collection that they'll put out after the symposium. So, especially if you are, boy, if you are one of those people who's been interested in this for a long time, and you want to get your voice heard, you want to kind of be a get into more serious research, or have the serious research you've already been doing get some long needed like attention or something. This would be a way to do it, because I know one of the organizers. She's a friend of mine, and they don't give a fuck if you've been on TV. They don't care about any of that shit. They don't care how many fucking followers you have on social media. They care about the quality of your work. And so if you've got some interesting ideas, if you've been doing some fucking cool work in any of these weird fields, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get your work out there and get it seen and have it be taken seriously. I'm sure you get this all the time too, Asherz, but people are constantly asking me like, hey, like how do you get into this?
Hmm.
And there's no roadmap, right? Like there's no
Right.
clear directions on how to start in an anomalous field, right? But this is as good a way as any. This would look good, I think, on somebody's resume, in terms of in accomplishment, that you've done in one of these fields. So, if you're interested, of course, now I wrote a short article letting people know about it, on our websites. You can always go to the Singular Fortean Society website and check it out. But you can also just literally look up the Association of Paranormal Study, or Google something like Paranormal Research Symposium, and you'll probably find it through there too. But yeah, I know, especially right now, because it is, I think, more ghost people are organizing it and sponsoring it. They're looking for cryptozoological entries. So if you have a special interest in cryptids, this would be a great opportunity, because they need more cryptid submissions for this symposium. So by all means, fucking, I don't know, write something.
Awesome. Okay. Are you going to submit something?
I wish I had time. I
Yeah.
considered it. I just don't know, between everything I have going on and like this, well, especially like this book project, I'm like,
Hmm.
fuck, can I actually commit to that? Oh, and I should mention the abstracts are due March 15th.
Oh,
So
yeah. Okay.
you have some time. Well, these abstracts, they only have to be like, they're like 300 words, right? But
Sure.
you do have to have like a solid idea. And, and so, I'm like, well, shit, like, can I add a trip to Gettysburg to my calendar this year?
Yeah.
Will I have time to write like a several thousand word research paper on top of the research and book I'm already doing?
Sure.
Probably not. But other people, like, I think, will find this to be an excellent uh, opportunity. And believe me when I say, like, under other circumstances, I would absolutely be jumping all over this. 100% I would.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good way to, you're right, to kind of get your start, get your name out there. You're right. There is no roadmap for this. That is probably one of the most popular, aside from probably the other popular question for me being, what's the weirdest thing you've ever heard? Um,
Right.
it's definitely like, how do you get into this? How do you do this professionally? Well, you just kind of do. You just kind of jump in somewhere. You just kind of take an opportunity and you just do it. And this is that opportunity. So don't squander it. If you've got an idea, share it. When I do these events, I learn from a lot of you guys, you know. You come up to me to talk to me about the weird stuff that I just talked to you about, but what you don't know is that y'all teach me a lot.
Oh yeah.
You know, one I had one kid talk to me at the Frogman Festival talking about different you know, folklore type frog creatures, and that's not I'm not like into that so much. And so I learned about a lot of different creatures that I'd never even heard of before. You know, because of just some random kid that I'll, you know, I may or may not ever talk to again, you know. It You guys are smarter than you give yourself credit for, you know. Jump in there. There's no rules here. You don't have to have any degrees to get into this stuff. And you know, in the meantime, you may actually end up sharing something valuable with the rest of us that could help us further the science in any of this. So do it.
Yes.
Do the thing.
Everything you just said.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, with that being said, you want to talk about some reptile creatures, some not amphibians, but some cold-blooded um
Sure.
creatures of the night.
Boy, do I.
So you know what? Let's go ahead and start this. Let's go from let's do it on a sexy scale. Okay, so we're gonna start with not so sexy all the way down to the sexiest. All right,
Okay.
and I understand it's subjective. Don't come for me. Okay, I'm not here to kink shame you. Right? If you think that this first one is the sexiest, that's fine. Like you're allowed to think that. It's okay. But the not so sexiest, giant snakes. Tobias, what do you have any history with giant snakes?
Do I have any personal history?
Well,
I do not actually.
or professional history with giant snakes.
No, honestly, like that's not something that I get reports of very,
Okay.
very often or ever. But it is interesting, like you hear reports of, these anomalously large anacondas and shit out of the Amazon River basin.
Mm-hmm.
People will be talking about seeing like 100-foot snakes and shit. And I put it somewhere around like the thylacine or anomalous big cats, I think, in terms of overall credibility or believability. Like I have no problem at all believing that there are fucking enormous snakes that get to that size in some of these areas that are more isolated, which are also areas that we know already have big fucking snakes in them. So
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, definitely. There's a really famous photo of one of these giant snakes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was taken from a helicopter. Allegedly, I didn't put the guy's name down because I suck, but uh just throwing that out there. Allegedly, there were folks in a helicopter, and they had seen this giant snake. So he had the pilot circle back around to try to capture a picture of this snake. And while he was doing that, he claims that the snake kind of stood up, like reared its head up about 10 feet in the air and was like wanting to strike the helicopter. He did manage to capture a picture. It was not in striking stance at the time. And some people have analyzed this photo to death with you know, the size of it ranging from 50 feet to 150 feet. You know, so reports of like these giant snakes have been around for a long time. Back in the cool days of the internet, I'd say maybe 2008 or so. I remember a very famous picture going around of a Burmese python in Florida that tried to swallow one of the alligators and died. You know, so you could see the photo of you know, of the python itself split open with the alligator
I
inside of it.
remember that photo, and
Yeah,
it was all kinds of fucked up. Oh, hey,
yeah,
just okay. So about that helicopter photo. So yes,
yeah.
that was Colonel Remy Van Leerda. I
There we
think
go.
I'm saying that correctly. Who was flying over the Congo in a
Mhm.
helicopter, and that was, I mean, supposedly it was taken decades ago,
Yeah,
like what 1962 or something. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like looking at that photo, like if people haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Like it looks weird. It could be a giant snake, or it could be a tiny snake close up,
Yeah, sure.
um, I don't know. Like there could be some weird shit with perspective there,
There's no
but
banana for scale,
I know we
so,
need banana for scale. Thank you.
um, it
Agreed.
it's definitely a snake,
It looks like a snake. Yes,
I
that much we know.
I can say that I've seen some snakes, and that is, I think, one of them. It is an interesting story and an interesting photo. It is old. It's been around for a long time, but giant snakes, again, that's something that's been around for a very long time, and that is just all over wherever you find snakes. There are giant snake stories.
Right.
But yes, thank you for
Well,
fact checking and getting that guy's name, because I do want people to look it up. It is a
yes.
they've probably seen it, but just in case you haven't,
Real quick
definitely.
clarification. Sorry.
Sure.
The photo I think was took in 1959, but was shared supposedly originally in 1962.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there was a historian who had actually, I believe he was a historian who had plugged it around to people and kind of got it more notoriety. And he had measured it at like, I think it was like 190 feet or something insane like that. I mean, really ridiculous. That I don't believe that there are any 190-foot snakes. I can buy a 50-foot snake.
oh yeah.
You
I mean, we
know,
already know that what there are big ass snakes that get to what 20, 25 feet. We know that.
sure,
And
yeah,
that's enormous.
yeah.
That's like fucking four of me,
Yeah. Right.
you know?
That's big enough. We don't it doesn't need to be any bigger than that in my personal opinion, but I could believe that there are some that get larger. Why not?
Sure.
There's not, I mean, just because, the average male height is like 5'10" to 6'1" doesn't mean that we don't have men that are 7 feet. We do, it happens.
Right.
Why can't we have that variance in nature? Well, we do. It's just a matter of finding what the largest one is, where those measurements align. I don't think it's normal. I think that when we have these giant snakes, there's probably some easy scientific explanation about genetics and mutations that explain it away. You know, um, that's my opinion, though. But the picture of the alligator with the snake. And I think that's happened a couple of times now. Um, I think there have been I know there have been giant snakes that have swallowed adults, grown adults. Those stories are aplenty also on the internet. If you just look up, man-eating snake, they're out there. It does happen. So these things are dangerous. They're a very real potential threat to people, just not, every day. You know, in Ohio, I asked kind of what your history is with the giant snakes, because we have a huge snake story in Ohio. We have the peninsula python, allegedly, which is
Okay.
a 15 to 20 foot snake that lives up in Cuyahoga, so north, kind of more where the lakes are. That story's been around since probably the 1950s. 15 to 20 feet isn't as big as 50 to 150, but
It's
that's still
big for
pretty.
Ohio.
It's big for Ohio, and that's pretty impressive for a snake like that to live in Ohio, because they are cold blooded.
Right.
You know, is there a breeding population of some type of python up there? I mean, doubtful, but I mean, the stories have been around forever, so why not?
Sure. Well, the only way snakes manage to live in the Midwest is by hibernating. Like they have to go underground during the winter.
Yeah, yeah, they
So
burrow.
like this would have to be no different because it's not
Mhm.
surviving the fucking winter
No,
otherwise.
right, right. So, is it possible? Absolutely, absolutely possible. Is it probable? I don't know. I've never seen one here, so I can't say. I'm gonna say yes,
Yeah.
because that's the fun answer.
Sure. As a giant snake myself, I have to say that yeah, I do believe in myself after years of therapy. So
You are pretty. Are you just a snake like folded up into human skin?
yes,
Yeah, I knew it.
it's true.
Fuck.
I know I'm like 50 garter snakes in a trench coat.
Perfect.
Mhm.
We all knew that about you, by the way.
Right. Well, good.
So
I'm
yeah.
glad I don't have to keep it a secret anymore.
So giant snakes, again, another cryptid reptile. It's not quite enough. I don't believe to do a whole episode on. Wanted to cover it. Have you seen a giant snake? Let us know. Let us know. Um, the next one I want to talk about is, it's my favorite. It's one of my. I have so many favorites. But it's a personal favorite of mine. It's the Crosswick Monster. Have you heard of this guy?
The what now?
The Crosswick Monster.
I don't. I think you're going to have to educate me on what this is.
Ooh, so this one's it's a lot sexier than giant snakes, but not the sexiest yet. We're not there yet. This one is also very local to me. So in 1882, okay, it's the old one, oldie but a goodie. Two boys were out fishing in Crosswick, Ohio, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now Waynesville, Ohio, but Crosswick at the time. And while they're out fishing, they're ages 11 and 13. They had some they heard some like rustling in the bushes nearby, and they were just like, whatever, animals. It happens. Until a giant salamander type creature jumps out from the bushes and actually grabs one of the boys in its mouth and starts dragging him up into this old dead hollowed out tree. Okay, so there's some inconsistencies about if it's the younger boy or the older boy. Doesn't matter, it's a child, and starts dragging him to the tree. So as the brother is trying to yell and scream and is obviously upset, a group of men within the community were also kind of out in the woods. They heard the commotion, they come running, and they come in time to see the creature, kind of backing up into this tree with the child in its mouth. It drops the child, and they scoop up the kid. They go back into town, take the kid to the local doctor. He's okay. He's upset, but he's okay. And they all kind of get together at the local bar to talk about what's next, right? They decide, well, we can't be having this creature snatching up our babies, right? So they form my favorite, a cryptid posse,
Nice.
and they are going to go hunt this creature down. So they go out into back where the tree is, right? Because they saw it go into the tree. They go out there, and it's like the whole town. It's like 30 people, all right, and they are all standing around this tree, and they are trying to coax this creature out of this tree. And while they're doing so, they're kind of yelling into the hole at the bottom. They're kind of trying to bang on the tree and whatnot, scare it out. They start smoking it out, and it does eventually come out. It actually jumps out of the top of the tree. And when it does, it jumps and hits the ground. And what everybody sees with their own eyes is a 30-foot long, from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail, creature. And it's initially on all fours, but it lands on all fours. It kind of looked like the body of it, they described, was more snake-like with four legs. So very long, kind of the wiener dog of lizards, right? And so
I
what
mean,
happens?
yeah.
That's what it is, right? It's the wiener lizard. Um, so instead of scurrying off on all four legs, this is where it gets fucking weird. It stands up on 2 feet and runs off on its two back legs. And about half the town said, I'm not fucking with that shit, and left, but the other half decided to pursue it, and they pursued it into this little kind of cave area where it went into. And they had some people go to the exit of where this cave is, and some people stay at the entrance, trying to once again coax this creature out. They're going to catch it. And it just fucks off. It never comes out again. Nobody ever sees it ever again. Um,
Huh.
there is legitimate aftermath to this story. The doctor, who treated the young boy, did come out and talk about it, said he was fine. The young boy ended up growing into a young man who never went fishing ever again the rest of his life. He actually moved from the city, and never returned. It was pretty traumatic for him. The Crosswick Monster, you guys, of Ohio. The
Well,
bipedal
shit.
part is my favorite part.
There are some lizards
That
that
do
will
that.
run on two
Mhm.
legs. They absolutely will rear up on their hind legs and run that way. Although I'm picturing this one like having like built up a big cartoonish cloud of dust on all fours and then suddenly stand up and just take off on two legs.
Just go off. 30 feet is pretty big. Now, granted, you are talking about people eyeballing it.
Right.
And who knows, from 1882 until now, was it 30 feet? How many times do you tell that story and the fish gets bigger and bigger,
Right.
Definitely could have been 8 feet, and that's still impressive. Could have been 15. 30 is, but again, 30 you're talking tip of the nose to the tip of the tail, the whole thing. You'd say the tail is about half the size of the body, so the body itself is about 15 feet. Um,
Right.
I think that this story, this happened. Okay, absolutely. Like in my mind, like this is a 100% true account of something that happened. Um, and I think that what they saw was probably some type of displaced, maybe some type of monitor, some type of giant salamander. Giant salamander is a big thing as far as cryptid goes in New England, I believe. So I don't know. I like it though.
Sure. I mean, it's a great story.
you
Um,
know.
yeah, I think that an out of place animal could definitely be what this account is really describing. And like
Right.
you said, like an out of place monitor, giant salamander. It could have been a fucking Komodo dragon for all I know.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, shit gets in weird places.
Hmm.
Like, well, I mean, how many times have you heard of, you know, alligators in places that they're not supposed to be? Be that
Oh yeah.
sewers or some very cold climate that they wouldn't be well adapted to. I know for a fact that I wrote about one of these not that long ago. Well, not that long ago. It's probably like several fucking years ago. Um, I mean, really, it always is. I'll be like, didn't I write about that like a year ago? And I'll look and be like 7 years ago. Yeah, the Beaver Run Snow Gator. Do you know
Oh
about this one?
no.
So in September of 2011, security personnel at Westmoreland County's Beaver Run Reservoir in Pennsylvania spotted a 5 foot long alligator swimming in the reservoir's northern waters. Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County Manager Chris Kerr was, I think it's, maybe it's Kerr. I'm going to say Kerr because I think that's funnier.
Chris Kerr.
Yeah, Chris Kerr was understandably concerned and contacted the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, but was told not to worry. So yeah, I mean, people were seeing this 5 foot long gator swimming around as recently as 2011 in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, where it shouldn't be.
Like
Sure.
right. So definitely out of place. Now they never actually found a body. And this is after some searching, like there were over a dozen people in several boats and went out into the reservoir and looked around for it and everything, but never could find it. But like there are extremely well documented accounts of this too. Like really, just a,
Hmm.
a couple years ago, like somebody had let, I would assume, what was at one point a pet alligator out in Chicago. So it's just swimming around, you know.
God.
Yeah, literally. Like it's like people do stuff like this. It
Yeah.
does happen.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be less likely in the 19th century when when maybe people weren't able to travel or animals weren't maybe trafficked as much as they are now. But it's not outside of the realm of possibility.
Right, exactly. Something unfamiliar to these people that don't typically see any type of a big lizard. Even an iguana, I think during the 19th century is weird, right, to them
Sure.
in Ohio. They're
Right.
not native here, so why not?
I mean, women in pants would have been
Right.
fucking weird to people in Ohio in the 19th century. Come on.
They would have already. I mean, they would have also gathered up a mob, right, to handle her.
It's true. Women in pants are my favorite cryptid from Ohio in the 19th century.
So anomalous, right?
Right?
Um, what's extra fun about this story? Let me tell you something. So I work, right? I have a job. I know, you guys, it's crazy, right? I'm not gonna tell you what I do, but I have a job, and I had to go into the office one day because I was having issues with my equipment. And I go talk to the tech guy. He's got no idea who I am. I work from home. I don't talk to people at work. We're not friends. Except for those of you that work with me and listen to the show. We're best friends.
Well, obviously,
Um,
yes. Buy all of your friends' merch.
right. Exactly. Support your friends. Um, So I go into work. I've never talked to this guy a day in my life. I go in. I'm not dressed. I'm not, I'm just dressed as a, you know, Midwestern mom. Um, I go in. I'm not wearing anything indicating what I do. Is my point.
Right.
And I don't remember how we got on this topic. But the gentleman had mentioned Mothman to me, and which is weird in and of
Right.
itself, you know. And I was like, that's really crazy that you mentioned that, because that's what I do. You know,
Right.
outside of here, I do Mothman every night. And he's gets really excited, and he's like, well, I saw it. I said, really, you saw it? He's, well, I don't know what I saw. He said, I'll be honest with you. So it tells me the story about how he is sitting at his home in Waynesville, Ohio. And I will say, Waynesville, unlike Loveland, Ohio, Waynesville is very wooded and
Mhm.
very rural. And, there's not a lot of houses and stuff out there. It's mostly farmland. But he's sitting at his house, and he keeps his binoculars out on his porch because he lives up against a tree line, just to check out the deer, the coyote, whatever. And he sees something in the distance. He grabs the binoculars to look at it, and he can't really tell what it is. He says it's just kind of a dark shape that is seems to have like spikes or wings or something on its back. It was like a human shape though. He said he didn't know if it was Mothman. He didn't know if it was, guess what, the Crosswick monster. Which, let me tell you, people in cryptozoology have never heard of the Crosswick monster. Like, this is such a very specific local story. Like, it's so little and unknown. Like, the
Right.
fact that this man knew what it was at all, tells me that I feel like he definitely saw something and tried to kind of dig up and figure out what it was.
He should probably submit an abstract to that symposium.
He should, or I should, about the
He sh
Crosswick monster.
he
Yeah,
well,
he should.
he should. You both should.
We both
But
should.
if he knows what the Crosswick monster is, then he seems educated enough.
I know, right? It's pretty. I was impressed. He said the Crosswick monster, and I was like, "What? I've literally never ever heard another person say those words."
You know what? I actually Googled it after you mentioned it first, and you know who has written about it?
Who?
Adam Benedict
Oh
over
my god!
my good buddy Adam
I
over at
can't
the
say I'm
Pine Barrens
surprised.
Institute. He knows every fucking thing about every stupid thing that nobody else has ever heard
Right.
of. It is amazing.
I That does not surprise me one bit.
It shouldn't. Yeah, that's his whole thing. It's his whole shtick is just knowing the most obscure shit ever.
And that
I
is
love
like
it.
that is obscure.
Right?
So I don't know. Did the man see Mothman or Crosswick? I have no idea. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what he saw. He did invite. He said, if you want to come out to the property and kind of look around, you can. I haven't taken him up on it yet, so I don't usually schmooze with the people at work. It's kind of
Yeah, that's
weird to
weird.
me. So we'll see. But anyway, potentially a modern day sighting of this giant. It was walking upright, spikes on its back or something, wings or something. He didn't know. But that area is fucking weird. Definitely lots of reports of different things in the area. So a giant salamander creature thing that's bipedal sometimes, wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised. But going off of that, there is another similar creature that also happened just 2 hours away in Kentucky. And Milton, Kentucky is known as the Milton Monster. Okay. But this was almost 100 years after the Crosswick Monster. This was the summer of 1975. Um, we had two brothers, Clarence Cable, and then his brother, which is a very unfortunate name, Caleb Cable, who helped operate. So Clarence owned the Bluegrass Body Shop, which is a junkyard there in Milton, Kentucky. One fine summer day, Clarence comes out and he spots this giant lizard between behind a couple of the junk cars there. He kind of tried to approach it. It hissed at him and then scurried off. Now what he's describing looks very similar to I believe they're called lace monitors. It had black and white stripes and then also speckles all across it. It was huge. It was about 15 feet. from tip of the nose, tip of the tail.
Right.
A couple of days after he had spotted this one, his brother Caleb, kind of saw the hood of one of the junk cars rattling, and then it kind of popped up, and this creature popped its head and like kind of the top half of its body out, was gonna make a run for it. He went to go get his brother, and they grabbed the gun and they were gonna shoot it, and they couldn't find it when they came back out. Um, and then they did actually do like a dedicated, guess what? They rounded up a cryptid posse. It was going to hunt this thing out of the junkyard, and they looked all around for it. They couldn't find it anywhere, and never saw it again.
I will say
So
this: the 1970s was the era of the cryptid posse. It
was it?
was. It was. It really was. Like, I mean, there are so many fucking cases like that. I mean, can you imagine? Like, nobody's rounding up a cryptid posse in 2024.
I know. I always try. Nobody's interested.
Nobody's gonna grab their axes and their baseball bats and go hunt a fucking cryptid with you.
It's so
But in the
disappointing.
70s, there were people just waiting around to do that shit. Just champing at the bit. Just couldn't wait.
Yeah, it was like what they did. Right? There was no smartphones. You went out and hunted
Yeah.
monsters like real men.
Seriously.
Um,
Well, I mean, think about it. Like, this is the era of like Boggy Creek,
mhm.
Like, this is honestly like, I mean, I've heard people say that like the 70s were sort of the golden age for cryptids, and
Yeah,
cryptid research. I think it was a just the right time in America. Like, there was just enough going on and enough like mainstream interest in stuff like this, and so much of it still seemed so fucking possible, right?
yeah.
That fuck yeah, if people are gonna go grab their guns and head out to fucking chase down Momo
Oh
or
yeah.
the fucking Milton monster or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, get the whole damn family,
Absolutely.
we'll all just go out for the day hunting monsters.
Yeah, people they got all up in arms.
I'm jealous. I was born at the wrong time, I guess,
I hear
because
you.
I feel like I missed out on a nice cryptid posse.
I would have
Um,
been awesome in the 70s. I check so many boxes. Has a beard. Yup. Wears flannel shirts. Fuck yeah. Also wears boots and blue jeans. You know it. Drinks beer out of a can. Fuck yes. I would have rocked in the 70s. I would have been the coolest. I would have
y-
led every cryptid posse.
well, I don't know, except for those tabletop role playing games, that people would have thought that you were a Satanist.
Well, that wasn't until the 80s.
That's true.
So
That's
I would have
true.
had a sweet like 6 years because D&D came out in 1974. So yeah, I could have rode that into the early 80s. At which point, yeah, I probably would have been jailed for being a satanic pedophile or something. But
Yeah,
I,
no,
you know, I would have had a good run.
you would have had a good couple
So
years.
yeah, it is what it
Now,
is,
nowadays, when people go out looking for a cryptid, they call it an expedition. Fuck that. Just call it what it is. It's a posse.
right?
It's a cryptid hunting posse,
They
and
still bring guns. I mean, it's basically the same
that's
thing.
true. That's true. But posse sounds cooler than
It does sound
expedition.
cooler.
What, these people think that they're scientists? Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's very important to have cryptid expeditions. I'm not shitting on anybody getting out there doing the work. We need more people like that. Um, but the point is that you can make it a fun time. It doesn't have to be boring. Like
Yeah.
it can be cool. You guys, let's bring back hunting posses.
Well, what
Um,
we need is just a good old fashioned monster scare. That's what's really missing
yeah,
today. Because
yeah,
like every single one of these, the reason they occurred is again, I think there was just it was the right cultural zeitgeist at that time to actually be able to get enough people scared of a monster to leave their houses with weapons to go look for it. And I
yeah,
don't think you could do that very easily now.
yeah. I agree. I agree with that. People don't want to leave their houses for the basics.
Right.
People don't leave their houses to have a good time.
Yeah, they'd like, yeah, they'd seriously just be looking up to see if there's like an app where they can order a posse to go hunt the monster.
We should make a posse cryptid hunting app. Like we will be the posse, and you can hire us to go out and and hunt your monster for you.
Oh, totally. It's like DoorDash, but just
For
fucking
cryptids,
just
yeah.
cryptid posses.
Yeah, we gotta make it we should, I don't know, we call it, like, cryptid cartel or something.
Nice.
Something neat. I'm not gonna do it, but if somebody does, I will, you can hire me.
Sue them.
So just to sue them. Okay, well, that's a better idea.
Because this is your idea now, which I'm claiming 50% ownership of. So we will sue them.
We'll sue them to okay, so if you do this idea, you're gonna get sued.
Yes.
So I hope you're prepared. But yeah, no, giant lizards, lizard creatures, lizard cryptids, whatever you wanna call them. Again, also, there's no shortage of stories of these things. These just happen to be, like, my favorites, right? And ones that I
Right.
feel like are kinda topical because, again, this Milton monster was only, the 2 hours in between, you know? Is there a breeding population? Now, the brothers actually had a really good theory about what they thought they saw in Kentucky. They had speculated that maybe one of the junk cars that they had, it wasn't necessarily a junk car, just one of the cars that they had towed and had on the lot, had eggs in it of some type of, exotic lizard. They weren't thinking that this was an undiscovered species or anything like that. They had a very reasonable explanation for potentially what, of course, they didn't find any egg bits or anything, but I don't know, maybe the lizard ate them, who knows?
Well, I
Uh,
mean, I think that's a thing, right? At least in some species, where
right,
they'll eat that as like their initial nutrients after hatching.
right.
Um,
So and it
but
was the
yeah,
middle of summer, so it's
right.
it's hot, right? It's warm enough for these things to live and hatch and be alive, I don't know.
Sure. No, I think that makes as much sense as anything.
Mhm.
Because you bring up breeding populations, and I don't think that these sightings happen with the frequency that we would
Yeah.
expect to see if these were animals living in large enough populations to be breeding
Mhm.
in these environments.
I agree.
You would see them more often.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And even, you had brought up displaced alligators in different, areas. Um, ginormous alligators is also a cryptid. Guess what? It is. There are stories of, these 30, 35 feet alligators that are allegedly walking. Now, we've seen some pretty ginormous gators, but not
I mean,
quite
they
that
already
big.
get up to like 20 feet.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty
Right.
fucking big. Like, if you saw a 20-foot alligator, you would think you were losing your mind
Yeah.
and you were seeing a fucking monster.
Oh, yeah. People really underestimate like how big 20 feet is.
That's so big.
It really is. And I just don't think that's why, like, when you get like, also, Thunderbird sightings is another one. You'll get like 30 feet wingspans, and it's like, nah, just fucking. Have you ever seen a turkey vulture? Those things are massive. They're so much
Right.
bigger than you think, and they're only like 13-foot wingspan. Like they're not that big.
Right.
So again, it's just people. We're really good at over exaggerating. We're really bad at measuring things with our eyeballs. That's why we have tools to measure stuff.
Exactly.
you know these things are big, but do giant animals like this exist out there in the wild? Absolutely, why not? I think that is just going back to the snakes again. I think it's a very real possibility that we have some that tend to get bigger, especially if they were in captivity prior and were accidentally let out or got out somehow. If they were some type
Sure.
of pets, dogs, most breed of dogs that we have now are not what dogs actually looked like 100 years ago or 500 years ago. We've bred them to be bigger or smaller or whatever it is that we need them to do. You can certainly have that with other type of animals. It's not just dogs. Like,
Well, think of feral pigs.
oh yeah.
And how big those bastards are because they're raised in captivity. And when you're raised in captivity,
Hmm.
you will be the biggest, healthiest fucking specimen
Hmm.
that
Yep.
is humanly possible.
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
most animals don't get that big in the wild because they can't get enough food to ever get that big because you
Right.
got to fucking hunt all the time. You're not just being fed constantly,
Hmm.
and a lot of them don't live that long because it's fucking
Right.
hard living out in the wild.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like you look at fucking feral pigs, and they get loose, and it does not take pigs very long to go fucking feral, and they turn into the biggest, meanest monster fucking pigs that you've ever seen
Oh
or
yeah.
that could ever exist.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, if you raised an alligator in captivity and it got out, it would probably be a fucking monster.
Right.
Sure.
Yep. It's gonna be yeah, it's gonna be larger than what they normally would get in the wild. So these things aren't unheard of. There's definitely a scientific backing to them. It's just again, it's something that we actively study, but is not the sexy part of cryptozoology, which is why you probably don't hear about a lot of these stories on podcasts and things like that, because it's seen as kind of more of a normal science, whereas like yes, we are always looking scientifically for the largest alligator, right? We're going to
Right.
record what the next size is, and they just get bigger and bigger every time it happens. So let's switch gears. I told you we were doing this on the scale of the least sexy to the sexiest.
Okay.
Um,
Well, what can be sexier than a monitor lizard? I'd like to see.
well, let's go a little bit a different direction. I've got two more to cover here. Um, the next one is going to be the lizard man.
Ah, lizard man is pretty sexy. All right.
Lizard man's pretty sexy.
You've got my attention.
So ever since we could catalog footprints, one footprint that pops up every little bit are these lizard-like three toes. But in the 1980s, that seemed to have really held some type of water when people in Bishopville, South Carolina, started seeing a bipedal green, wet, scaly creature in their neighborhoods. Most of the time attacking their cars, apparently hits vehicles. With that said, Tobias, I'm gonna let you take it away because that's really the extent of my knowledge of this creature so far.
Oh boy, so we're talking the lizard man of scape or swamp, huh?
Mhm. We are,
All
we
right.
are.
So this really kicked off in like 1988 when a Christopher Davis reported to the local sheriff that his car had been damaged by a creature that he had described as this large lizard-like humanoid with these red eyes. Right? He said that he had stopped kind of near this swamp because he had a flat tire after work, and he got his tire changed, and he's putting everything back in his trunk, and he turns and he sees this thing charging at him. So he hauls ass to get into the fucking driver's side of his car and takes off, but this thing jumps onto his car like it's a fucking action movie and like is clinging to the fucking hood of his car. And so he slams on the brakes and it like flies off of his car, which gives him enough time to get the hell out of there. But it like damages the shit out of his car. Obviously, there's all these scratches and everything on his car. Um, so I mean, his car had visible damage, and he told his story and he stuck by it. I actually watched an interview with the Lee County sheriff at that time, um, whose name was, oh, hold on, I'll think of it. Yeah, Liston Truesdale. Yeah, which is a great name, by the way. Liston Truesdale. That dude
Yeah,
sounds like he was a general in the fucking Civil War. Like
yeah.
what?
He
Okay,
sounds pretty legit, though.
right. I mean, if you watch him get interviewed about this, I don't even know if he's alive anymore. But I caught an interview with him from shit sometime in the 2000s, I think 2008, I think. And he was still around then and still willing to talk about it. And yeah, I mean, like, he's very matter of fact, and he definitely took it seriously because it was his observation that Christopher was affected by whatever had happened to him. So it certainly seemed that something had happened to him. But also he had like a dozen other reports of people saying they had seen this fucking lizard man monster, right? So he had to
Yeah.
take it seriously. And what's interesting is it really all started off because you mentioned the car damaging thing, but it
Mhm.
really all started off with the investigation of a car that was damaged overnight while parked at home, right? And it wasn't until like a couple weeks later that Christopher Davis actually came forward about his car being damaged too, and much later actually, because this is something that supposedly still happens, right? Like people still claim to see this lizard man.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
And so while I was watching this interview, they actually had this couple on from that area as well, and they had, at the time of the interview, had just recently had something like fuck their car up. And looking at the damage of this car too, like it looked like something had chewed on the front like lip of the hood of their car, like just chewed it to shit, right? And I don't know why anything would do that. Like it was just the weirdest damn thing. And there, there was blood all over their car and all these scratches and everything. And they did have the blood tested, and I guess it came back as canine.
Hmm.
And so, the speculation then was that coyotes had decided to chew their car up. But I would have an easier time believing that like a lizard man who just happened to have killed a coyote and was covered in its
Right.
blood fucked their car up, looking at the damage that had been done to it. So
Why not?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a really interesting story. It's something that like, especially, well, Bishopville in Lee County there has really leaned into this. So they have a festival, or at least they did several years ago, where they will celebrate their local monster, and they'll sell merch and sort of trot all that stuff out. Um, and also, like, I don't know if you remember this. This would have been 2017, that last big solar eclipse we had.
Yeah.
The South Carolina Emergency Management Division decided to tweet this map for some reason, showing like the area affected by the eclipse, and of course, like they had a like on this map. Then they'd also plotted like all of the lizard man sightings, and I mean it was very tongue in cheek. Like obviously, like come on, like they're not taking this seriously. But what's interesting about that to me is that the culture there surrounding lizard man and lizard man sightings is so pronounced now that you'll see jokes about it in government, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody is so aware of this as a thing that it's this like cultural touchstone, and you see it all the time out there. So it's just it's fascinating in its impact on this community, right? And sort of what that has led to. So yeah, Lizard Man of Skateboard Swamp, look it up.
I love
Our
that they
our good
embraced them.
What's that?
I love that they embraced their monster. I
Oh
like
yeah,
when cities do that.
I was just gonna plug our good buddy Lyle Blackburn's
Yep.
book on if you really want to get into this. He did a great job writing about this lizard man. So you should be checking his work out anyway. But yeah, definitely check out his book on this subject. It is fantastic.
Yeah, he's done the probably the most comprehensive research on the topic.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, definitely check it out. He's also done other he's looked into other creatures like Momo and things like that allegedly in the Falk monster that also have three-toed footprints associated with them.
What is the Lyle and three-toed monster connection? That's what we need to dig into.
Right. There's
Does he only
obviously
have three toes? I've never seen him with his boots off.
that's got to be what it is.
Maybe.
He's got to only have three toes. I knew it. He is the lizard man. He's making
Right?
the footprints. It's just Lyle with the shoes off. Um, yeah, so that I mean, it's always fascinating to see a three-toed footprint. I have issues with it because it is not possible for something to be that large and only have three toes. Um, Except when, again, you keep getting these fucking three-toed footprints. What's up with that? I
Have
don't
you
know.
considered that they are extra dimensional beings that don't weigh as much as us
I guess.
because of science?
I guess. I
No, I don't
suppose.
know. Like it is weird. I mean,
Makes me mad. Um,
right?
makes me irrationally angry. They're not coming from Bigfoot, I can tell you that. There's no way. I don't accept that. Don't accept it.
There's so much of this though that doesn't match our expectations in terms of what we find to be scientifically like plausible,
Yeah,
frankly, or
I agree.
even possible sometimes. And yet it still is.
It still is. Yep.
And where does that leave us?
If
Like it just, that is the frustration that comes with doing this. It's very freeing, I think. Well, if you go back to like the work of Charles Fort, right? Like
Mhm.
nobody fucking hated dismissive scientific explanations or science telling him what was impossible more than Charles Fort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he's just like, okay, you say it's impossible, and yet here we fucking are.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's still happening. People are still seeing it. So where does that leave us?
You're
So
right. It's not very Fordian of me to get mad about three-toed footprints. I get it. Listen, I will be the first motherfucker to humble myself, and I will lick the toes of any three-toed monsters that we discover. So
now, we
I
could sell that on the internet. People would pay to see it.
Rule 34. Um, something for everybody. So, I don't, but it is fascinating. Nonetheless, I am still like a kid at a candy shop whenever there's a three-toed footprint. It's so exciting because it is so fucking bizarre.
It's
Um,
weird. Yeah,
yeah,
I love
and
it.
so I'm here for it. Like I said, it makes me irrationally angry because my logic says that's not possible, but you're right. It does and is clearly somehow in some way in some capacity because it's there.
Right.
So,
That's
maybe
that's
we'll
where I've ended up with so many of my investigations, over the years, right? Well, specifically like winged humanoids, where at this point, I think it's very safe to rule out any sort of like mundane biological answer
Mhm.
to what the fuck they are, because we don't have evidence of things like breeding populations or predation or any kind of ecological impact or any idea where they would live or could live. And so at that point, I think you just have to start entertaining wilder options,
Something else, yeah.
And I know I have a lot of friends who don't like this, but like, boy, it's real easy for me to get to that point with like Bigfoot too. I mean,
Yeah,
really it is.
right.
It's just,
Well,
we
and
should have
that's what I
more and we
say.
don't.
I have a personal opinion and I have a professional opinion. Um, my professional opinion has to be skeptical at all times. Otherwise I fall victim to confirmation bias.
Oh yeah.
My personal opinion wants all of it to be real. You know? I
Right.
want it to be real. I want to believe in it so bad. And that's why I do it professionally so that I can hope to further the science maybe one day. So I lied. I said I had two more. I said I had two more. Actually, now I have two more.
Wait. Okay. Before we get
Yes.
into those, I just want to say one thing. I don't think, okay, so things can be real even if they're not consistent with what we would expect from biology, right? So, like,
Yes.
because there aren't obvious breeding populations of winged humanoids, and I don't think that they're, this undiscovered biological species, doesn't mean I don't think it's possible that they're still real. They're just something outside of our current understanding of how the universe
Yes.
works.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, and then you think about like I say three-toed Bigfoot are bullshit, but you think about like humans and well, Lyle Blackburn, right, has three toes and he walks around just fine.
Yeah, I've seen him do it.
So I
Absolutely.
mean, it does happen. I suppose it does happen in a way. I'm sure that they can have deformed feet or injuries or whatever, to cause that. There can be explanations for this stuff that does fit our known science. So, and I'm sure that when Lyle lost his other two toes, the doctors probably told him he would never walk normal again, and they lied, you know? So
He proves them wrong every day.
you
That
wouldn't,
man's a hero.
right? You'd have no idea. So just saying,
Right.
he keeps his extra toes underneath his hat.
I mean, we'll never know because he won't take it off.
He won't take it off. Yeah, it's well, I think when they were fixing his foot, they surgically attached the hat to his head as well. So
That's smart.
that's my
You
theory.
know,
Yeah,
that
then
just
he's
makes
never got to worry
sense.
about it. You know. Um,
All right. And anyway, you've got two more of these,
yes, two more
and
of
we're
these.
gonna get through them. Damn it.
Yes, these two. We're not going to go into depth yet. We will go into depth on both of them on later episodes,
Mm,
because they deserve it. The next one, again, the least sexiest to the sexiest. We're almost there. Chupacabra.
nice.
Yeah, Chupacabra is not initially the mangy dog that we have come to know now. The original Chupacabra reports from Puerto Rico described a more reptile type of creature.
Yeah, love me Puerto Rican chupacabra.
Yeah, that's yeah,
That's the best. That's the one
yeah,
you want right
yeah.
there.
Yeah, fuck the Texas Terror dogs. They're not. I don't even call them Chupacabra. I don't.
They're
I
just
hate that.
mangy like fucking coyotes or,
Right,
like
dogs.
coyotes that have mated with domestic dogs to make hybrids and shit. It's whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, there's nothing sexy about that. Now,
unless you're a dog and you're really into coyotes.
that's true. Fair point. But the Puerto Rican chupacabra was, described as probably 3 foot tall, just weird reptilian type features. It had the spines on its back. Just fucking weird, right? Just out there. Now, chupacabra, some people will try to be like, well, the dogs count because the real definition of chupacabra is just goat sucker. And so anything that sucks off goats is chupacabra.
Right.
I disagree with you respectfully. I think that yes, so that is technically what it means. However, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about this weird reptile thing. Um, Chupacabra's story is, like I said, we're not going to get too far into it, too in depth. There's some people that think that this was just kind of bred from a hoax. A woman reported seeing this creature one evening and later on admitted that she had just watched the movie, what was it, Species, a couple weeks
Yeah.
prior. So some people think that she was just kind of saying that she saw the creature in that movie.
I
Um,
mean, it doesn't really look like it. And believe
no.
me, I saw Species and I saw it a bunch because I was the right age to really appreciate that movie when it came out, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Because like the main alien, when she's not being a gross alien, um, she was a very talented and attractive actor. So, yeah, every
Gotcha.
guy, me and everybody I knew watched the shit out of that fucking movie. Um, and also, it's a cool horror movie, which I also love. You know,
Yeah. Sure.
and it's not very similar, frankly. Like at least not to me. Like I don't get why people draw that comparison so much. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think that it looks that similar, but that is again why people kind of write it off as, oh, well, that's what it was. We did one of the news segments we did, I think, all the way back in 2021, um, was about a village that was under attack by what they described as being a chupacabra. Don't have the report immediately up, but they said that a UFO had landed in the village there, and a chupacabra came out and was just like kind of walking around the village, like yelling at everybody. And then, then after a couple of hours of that, it went back into the ship and kind of fucked off. Now, there were some people with like phones and stuff, but they were afraid to try to come out and take picture or video of this creature. But they did take like picture and video of there were like, circles burnt into the ground, typical UFO landing, right?
Sure.
Circles burnt into the ground and stuff like that. Um, which was interesting. What happened there? Mass hysteria? Well, we know how I feel about that, and I don't like that. So,
No, I mean, mass hysteria doesn't burn impressions in the ground.
no.
You know?
Yeah. And a lot of chupacabra sightings, again, real chupacabra sightings, not the dog creature, tend to have some type of like UFO lore behind it. Like there's lights in the sky and UFOs landing. And again, they're coming out of UFOs. And I mean, they seem to be directly related to some type of, ufological activity, which is neat. But again, this is why it needs its whole episode, its own episode, but very reptilian and, physically.
Oh yeah, no, I mean we 100% should do just an entire episode devoted to chupacabra. There
Yeah.
is so much to go through. I mean, you can get into like ancient fucking folklore and
Hmm.
shit of like similar things being described by other populations. It's a whole fucking thing, and none of it has to do or necessarily requires stupid fucking mangy coyotes in the American Southwest. But it is interesting to note how, I mean, because it really was kind of folklore in action to see the
Hmm.
stories of the chupacabra spread from Puerto Rico all the way through like the southern United States into like Mexico, into the American Southwest,
Hmm.
and then how that evolved and mutated into this entirely unrelated creature to the like original Puerto Rican chupacabra. But that would be stuff that we should talk about on a different show related to chupacabras.
Right. Yeah. It deserves its own spot. For sure, because there's a lot to it, and we'll get there. But that's probably the most famous reptile type cryptid out there. I think I would say, right?
Oh yeah,
But we're not gonna linger on it. We're gonna get into the sexiest, Tobias's favorite.
sexier
Um,
than chupacabra.
I
I'll
know,
believe
right?
that when I see it.
I know. So, taking it away from cryptozoology and straight into conspiratorial ufology, we've got the reptilian overlords. The
Oh, they are sexy.
That's pretty sexy.
Yeah.
You know these people. They are at your podiums at the White House. They are on your news stations. Um, these are the um, people that truly run this planet, are this reptilian race of aliens. And of course, I don't believe that, but I should say that up front. I don't believe that we are controlled or ran by a reptilian species. But this is definitely a very popular conspiracy, or I'll say belief. Okay, let me stop there before I piss off a lot of people. Let me say this. I think the Bible's bullshit.
what?
Okay.
What?
Hold on. I know, I'm just making people angry. But listen to me. Listen. I don't believe in it. Okay. I don't believe in the Bible. I think it's bullshit. Um, if we did not grow up with the Bible, if we had no idea the Bible existed and somebody randomly came up to you and started telling you all the stories out of the Bible, as a logical person, you'd be like, that sounds ridiculous, right? Sounds ridiculous.
I would believe it without any examination immediately.
We know that you're known for that. That's your thing. It sounds crazy, right? But there are people that believe in this. I mean, they legitimately actually believe every single word. They believe what they're being taught. They believe what they're being told, and that's up to you. It's not up to me to decide. Listen, I wasn't there. I don't know if a fucking great flood happened or not. It's not my business. But in the same way that we know and can observe that people believe so well religiously in the Bible, people believe in this reptilian theory. Okay. So I'm going to try to be super sensitive talking about this, but you've got to understand that I'm coming from a place as I don't believe in it. So that's my disclosure of it. Tobias, what do you? I mean, do these theories hold any water in your book? These reptilian overlords?
Well, it's okay. Yeah, I don't subscribe to a lot of conspiracies because only because not because I think that like the government is above reproach
Yeah, exactly.
or it's not possible, but because most of them don't meet the standard of evidence necessary
Hmm.
for me to invest belief in them.
Yeah.
That said, where I think reptilians intersect with something I might find credible or at least interesting would be actual reports from eyewitnesses who have claimed contact with UFO occupants with reptilian features.
Right. Yes. So this is also one of those topics that I think does deserve its own episode. Um,
Yes.
because I agree with you there. There are people that, reptilian type of creatures in that setting, I think legitimately happen. Just as much as the talk I just gave this weekend, there are people in that same setting that see frog people, you know?
Right.
I think that does happen. As far as reptilians ruling all of us, I don't subscribe to that one. And eventually we'll kind of get more, when we do the episode, get more into the details as to why it's because you can kind of track that history and where
Yeah.
those beliefs came from. And the person who tends to push those beliefs is not very credible or honest.
Right.
But I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. So I want to give it a fair shake of investigative research before doing a full episode on it. Um,
Definitely.
but yes, I agree with you. There are people that can you think of any particular cases where people see these beings and
I can think of one that was sent to us.
okay.
So let's see. We This would have been, when did we get this? This was a few years ago. So we received this in October of 2020,
Mhm,
and this witness had seen one of my Mothman sighting reports or articles that I had written on a report, and decided to write in with their own experience of encountering some anomalous being. And so, like, the subject line of their email was literally alien reptile looking humanoids. So, unfortunately, this was one where I wasn't able to significantly follow up. And so
mhm.
it did end up being published as a report from the void. But I'll just read their email real quick. It's not very long.
Sure.
It said, I won't tell the whole story here, but if you'd like to know more, get back to me and I'll get it all out. I've had an encounter with something that wasn't of this world. I honestly believe they were reptilian or something to that effect. They were tall, well built, and a cross between like an alligator and a man, but without a long snout, more like a human's face, and the eyes I'll never forget. I still see it burned in my mind's eye. The brightest, but also darkest yellow. It was piercing, and the pupil was almost shaped like a cat's, but dark. Not just dark color, but the intentions. There were two of them, one at the end of my cot and one behind me when I turned over, bent down. Anyways, nice Mothman article. Never seen something like that, but I've also had other very strange encounters occur as well. Best regards. So, I replied to their email, of course. Tried to set up an interview like I always do, but I just didn't receive any response, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So, um, on its surface, it's an interesting account. It doesn't strike me as an obvious hoax, and the reason for that is the lack of elaboration. Generally speaking, if somebody's going to send you a hoaxed account, it's not going to be like a quick sort of like generalization of their experience with the promise of follow up. They'll just
Yeah.
write this long fucking piece of, creative fucking fiction and send it to you and be like, this really happened, I swear. And then you never hear from them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this doesn't have any of the hallmarks of an obvious hoax. So I don't know what happened to this person. Um, I get a lot of these, unfortunately, where
Mhm.
who knows what happens to any of these people, what's going on with their lives if they can never get back to me. But they'll send something very interesting that seems on its surface to be credible, at least in terms of an actual experience, whether or not you believe that it is due to mental illness, hallucination, or actual encounter with a reptilian humanoid is up to you. But at least is indicative or potentially indicative of an actual experience. So
Yeah. Yeah,
who
and
knows?
I'll say I feel like I've never run the numbers on it or anything, but I do feel like, I mean, next to Grace, which is our, baseline for alien encounters, I'd say these weird reptilian creatures are probably second best. I mean, I,
They're
I
up
don't
there.
I don't feel like there's any shortage of these encounters with them. One of the accounts that I shared, which I guess I'll just kind of go over pretty quickly at the Frogman Festival, was about an incident that happened in Joinville, Brazil, where a 20-year old something biology student was staying at a beach house with friends. He decided to go for a swim. It was about 8 o'clock when he left. He had seen some weird lights happening in the water and then just completely blacks out and wakes up hours later in the same spot, goes back to the beach house with his friends, finds out that he's been gone since for a long time. It was 1 a.m. when he arrived back to the place. And, his friends are freaking out. And he says, well, I was right over here in this area, and they're like, well, we were over there and you weren't there. Um, he decided to undergo regression therapy. And regression therapy is very controversial.
Yes, to say the least.
Is it legitimate? We can't say for sure, but with these cases of missing time, I mean, frankly, it's all we've got. But whatever your thoughts are on it, he did undergo the regression therapy, and what he had remembered were these weird frog-like, reptile-like creatures that were very aggressive, which is again another kind of milestone, kind of cornerstone of these experiences with these things. They're not very nice. Well, grays usually aren't either. They're pretty soulless and mean. So they stripped him of all his clothes, put him up on an exam table, injected him with a ton of stuff, and then finally sent him on his way. But before they sent him on his way, they made sure that he knew that they weren't done with him. They were going to come back. And it freaked him out so much that during the regression therapy, he had requested, it was all recorded, he had requested that the person get rid of the recording. The guy did not get rid of the recording, and it is out there, but it's all in like Spanish or whatever. I mean, I guess it's Brazil. I don't know what he's saying. So whatever happened to him, I don't know. He did, this was all kind of reported anonymously when it happened, so we don't even know who he was really. But again, there's no shortage of these. I mean, these are a dime a dozen, really, if you really want to get into it. So, I mean, I don't know. I believe there's something to it. And, one thing that I had mentioned, again, most of mine were about specifically more frog creatures, but they had the vertical pupils, yellow eyes, green skin. Could very easily be more reptile than frog. Like we don't wouldn't test their DNA to see,
Right.
why these creatures would evolve to look like that. I don't know. Why in another universe far, far away, we assume that's where they live. Maybe, reptiles took over as the main intelligent life. I have no idea. But to just dismiss it entirely and say that it doesn't happen or, whatever is not that wouldn't be very Fordian of me, so.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, and the thing is too, I mean, even in what is arguably the single most famous case of a frog-like humanoid cryptid, the 1972 Loveland frogman sighting, that might not have been a frog because the way that it's
Yeah.
described is, as frog-like or lizard-like.
Hmm.
So, there's always a lot of ambiguity there. And I
Right.
think that we, as human beings, tend to want to categorize things.
Hmm.
And so we have this unfortunate tendency to um, destroy ambiguity. And that's not a good thing.
Right.
Like if something is ambiguous, if something is not clear, it is better for it to remain unclear than it is for us to categorize it incorrectly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Clearly, I think, I don't know. I can't tell you that these are frogs or reptiles or mantises, which are my favorite aliens, by the way. Um,
They're little creeps. Honestly, I know it's
Yeah.
like every time I hear about a mantis, it's like watching in the corner, like furtively,
Yes.
while somebody's being probed or something, and it's just like, dude, mantis, like that's fine. Like I'm not going to kink shame you, but I feel like there's not a lot of consent going on here. So
they're just
maybe you should work on that.
they're just all cucks. The cuck
They
mantis.
are literally like that's their whole vibe.
They're
Fucking
not even
mantis
there to
cucks,
study. Yeah, they just wanna watch.
right?
Yeah, no, I don't know, I like them. 'em, they're fucking weird. Um, but, yeah, I mean, again, I can't tell you with any certainty, what any of this is. I can just, again, offer you my opinion, and, my opinion, again, is that, that weird eyeball thing that you saw on the news from the news anchor is probably just bad digital rendering. It happens.
I don't know. It could be a reptilian.
And it could be. Sure,
That
why not?
that is my least favorite evidence, by the way, where like it'll be some shitty, like super low quality, like digital footage, and they'll be like, see, right
Right,
there. And it's just like some weird little glitch for like, less than half a second, which means nothing. But they're like, see, his mask slipped,
right, they're
you know,
shape-shifting. They're
wake up, sheeple. Yeah,
and it's like, "Okay."
right? It's just like, dude, okay. Like, I like They Live as much as anybody. Big
Yes.
John Carpenter fan. Rowdy Roddy Piper, amazing. I'll watch Keith David and fucking anything. But like, it's not real, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. There's no good evidence. And shitty, digital footage that's been compressed and put on the internet to be even shittier is not good evidence of
No.
anything.
Yeah. And we've seen this. We've seen things that could potentially be real, and you have these people that want things to be real so badly that they'll use bad evidence to support it. Like Xana, the Bigfoot woman that was
Yeah.
just an unfortunate human woman that was treated as an animal. And then later on, treated as a cryptozoological evidence. It's not that. Stop doing that. God damn it. Um, we it's interesting enough on its own that people are being abducted by these reptile creatures. Like we don't need them to also be our overlords.
Right. Well, we have this tendency to create these narratives, and we create them around all of these different phenomena. You can look at, well, hell, just like speaking of UFO occupants and alien abduction and things like that, right? Like, where has this led us? Like we
Yeah.
have all of these crazy narratives now, everything from like human alien hybrid programs to galactic federations.
Hmm.
Um, to warnings about nuclear annihilation or environmental annihilation. It's always some apocalyptic shit, right? And like there's no good evidence for any of that stuff, but at the same
Right.
time something certainly seems to be happening to people, you know
Right.
and it's like the question I find myself asking is like, are we creating these narratives, or are these narratives being fed to us by the phenomenon as just another way, there's just another layer of obfuscation, right? Just another way to confuse us or manipulate us
Mhm.
into not fully being able to understand it.
I mean, they're probably just like fucking with us. Like, we probably have like something special about our skin cells, right? And like, our skin cells are
Tastes delicious.
okay. There we go. Perfect. They taste really good. And it is a fucking delicacy to have human skin cells on their planet. And they just come here and they're like, wouldn't it be fucking hilarious if we said that, like, we were here to warn them about the apocalypse? And like, they'll just do
Right.
that. I mean, it could be that simple. It really could
You
be.
never know. Yeah, I mean,
Who knows? We can't understand why abductions and things like that happen to begin with. Um, we just aren't capable of knowing unless they are honest with us and tell us, and they can tell us whatever the fuck they want to, because we
right,
would be none the wiser. For why they're taking us or watching us or here or observing or whatever it is that they're doing, putting stuff in your butthole, who knows?
right.
um
Again, which is totally fine. But consent, aliens. You
Consent, yeah.
gotta have consent.
I mean, aliens, you'd be surprised how many people would be totally down for it. Like,
Oh yeah, tons of people.
I mean, it's not like we don't do that all the time with stuff that shouldn't be in your butthole. So, you
People
know,
constantly putting things in their butt, which is totally fine because that's their choice. But full enthusiastic consent, aliens. That's all we're asking for.
right. It's okay, you know. Well, and maybe they're starting to learn, and maybe that's why they're observing us. Like, is it okay to put things in their butthole? Are they fine with
Right?
that? I don't,
Huh.
you
We're,
know.
we're slowly teaching the aliens boundaries and consent.
Yeah, we're we're getting somewhere.
All
Um,
right.
I don't know. Again, the whole reptilian humanoid species, it will eventually be talked about in depth on the show, and why I think the conspiracy is bullshit, but why I think the aliens are legitimate. And I'm sure Tobias will have some things to say about it as well.
Oh, I will. I'm already thinking of things to say that I'm not gonna say because we'll be here we'll
Yeah,
be here all night. So yeah.
but I can't talk about reptilian creatures without bringing it up. So it
No, I'm
fits
glad you did.
fits the
I'm glad you
demographic a
did.
little bit. I don't know. What was your favorite one? The whole episode.
Oh boy. I'm gonna stick with my boy Chupacabra.
Yeah,
Because you talked about the OG Puerto Rican Chupacabra,
yeah,
which is my favorite and the only legitimate Chupacabra. So
yeah. We don't recognize the other chupacabra here. Sorry. Um, and we'll talk about why on a later episode. So,
absolutely. I look forward to it. I think it'll be great.
any closing remarks on any of these creatures or anything we've talked about here today, or just anything in general?
Oh boy. Full enthusiastic consent,
Yeah,
everybody. Like you need it. You should want it. Always get it. If you're an alien, a human, whatever. Consent.
yeah. Consent is key. That is the key to unlocking all of your fantasies. Anyway, all right then. Well, good message. And with that being said, guys, we'll see you back here on the next episode.